Hey everybody, Josh here, and this is the weekly update for Redeeming Grace Church. It is Monday, April 12th of 2021, and I want to actually start out this video talking about the sixth mark of the culture of our church, which is serious discipleship. We go all out in our pursuit of being transformed by Jesus. And so a few years ago, I had a group of college age and 20-somethings that would meet Sunday nights at my house. This was when I was a pastor over at South Canyon Baptist Church. And we began this slow walk through the Gospel of Luke, and just taking it kind of paragraph by paragraph. Took forever, but it was so rich and so wonderful and so formative for my own heart and soul. And I'd read it before. I knew all these things, but it sunk deep into my heart in that study. And at that same time, I was thinking about about church planting and kind of what maybe God would want us to do in terms of leading a new church, which eventually became Redeeming Grace Church. But the thing that struck me in that study is just how serious Jesus is about discipleship. I think that most of us that maybe have grown up in typical American Christianity is the idea that Jesus comes to you as you are, saves you as you are, and just loves you no matter what. And there's a sense in which that's true. But when you actually read the gospel, when you actually read what Jesus said, the idea that Jesus just kind of leaves you the way you are and lets you follow him kind of on your own terms is heresy. It's just simply not in the Bible. Let me give you some examples. Luke 9:23. He said to all, so this is not just for the rich people, poor people, religious, non-religious. This is the terms for everybody, including you and me. If anyone would come after me, in other words, be my disciple. Disciple just means follower, apprentice, so that's kind of the idea that follow, apprentice, kingly kind of language is in there. If anyone would come after me to be my disciple, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. That's a stunning statement. If you want to have my name attached to you, if you want to be saved by me, if you want to go on this Jesus thing in a saving way, then you have to deny yourself. You're dead. If you follow me, you have to live as if you and what you want and your terms, gone, dead. You follow me on my terms and take up his cross daily and follow me. Now just think about this for a minute, because cross just becomes kind of a little trinket to us. We know it's important. We know it's kind of Christian-y, but it's something we kind of hang around our neck, but as sort of this emblem or get tattooed on our arm. But just think about what cross would have meant originally. Cross is an instrument of execution. It is the most brutal death that the Romans could imagine for the worst of criminals. So Jesus is saying, you want to know what following me is like? It's like being crucified every day. What I need you to do is I need you to climb into the electric chair every day for me. I need you to be willing to go to a painful death every day. I need you to just psychologically, spiritually, in your own heart and mind, resolved every day to endure whatever it takes to follow Jesus on his terms and his way. That's what being a Christian is. That's what being a disciple is. There is no other means of salvation other than the means of following Jesus in this kind of way. That's Jesus's words. That's not me making this up. That's Jesus. Let's go to Luke 14, because just in case we thought that maybe that was a fluke, maybe that was just something that Jesus on that particular day was a little wound up, and maybe that really isn't an accurate assessment of his agenda. Luke 14, these big, massive crowds are following him, and this is fascinating because Jesus, whenever the crowds get really big, he then says something really strong that thins it out. Jesus has such a different way of building a following than we do. I know that whenever I go somewhere and talk to anyone about Redeeming Grace Church, one of the very first things will come up is, how many are you running? The success of a church is determined in our culture, in our minds, by how many people are showing up. And according to Jesus, it's when tons of people show up that Jesus decides, it's time to get this For him, fewer is better than more, and more committed, more intense, deeper commitment is more important than wide and shallow. Deep, serious discipleship is far more important to him than having a big following. We just need to remember that as a church, because we are going to be tempted regularly to offer a gospel, to offer a discipleship process that just makes everything the least common denominator to try to get more people to come. And while we want as many people saved as possible, we will miss Jesus if we go the route of just trying to gather a crowd. Jesus didn't care about it, and neither should we. And here's what he says. Luke 14:25. Now great crowds accompanied him, and he turned and said to them, if anyone, so this is the terms for anybody, if anyone comes to me, that's discipleship language, and does not, listen to this, hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Now that's really strong language. And what Jesus means there is he's doing a comparative, that your allegiance to me is so far higher than any other allegiance or relationship that really the distance looks more like hate. Your love for me is so supreme and so number one that number two looks like hate. The second most important thing to you could qualify as hate in light of the loyalty and love and affection you have for me. So this is not a call for us to despise and want our beloved friends to be dead, friends and family members. It is to say that saving faith, true discipleship, means that I take priority over everything. Now just think about that when it comes to our own lives. Would that be an accurate assessment of how your life looks? Like if you just took like an unbiased observer to just look at the last week of your life, would they go, yeah, that matches up? The dying daily and the willingness to put Jesus above all other priorities, yeah, that checks out. I notice that when it comes to their kids' practice schedules, to their vacation, to their work schedules, that discipleship, following Jesus, is at the center of it. It's just obvious by the way they live their lives, what they make a priority, how they spend their money and time, who they hang out with, that following Jesus is number one. In fact, it looks like they hate everything else compared to it. Would that be an accurate assessment of your life? Could that be true of you? Is that what it looks like? Now, Jesus then goes on to just talk about in Luke chapter 14 about different illustrations about counting the cost before you sign up to do something. And he's obviously relating that to discipleship. Like, if you want to be in on the Christian thing, that's great. But you really ought to know what I'm asking. And so Jesus is an awesome, he's a terrible salesman. Because he goes ahead and just like, instead of kind of like bait and switch, let me kind of bring you in with the benefits, not really tell you the costs. He leads with the costs and goes, yeah, that's the deal. And you can take it or leave it. The rich young ruler doesn't like the deal. So he walks away and Jesus goes, yeah, it's hard for rich people to enter the kingdom because, the cost is high. And for those that don't have much to lose, it's an easy price to pay. For those that have a lot to lose, it's a harder price to pay. But it's the same for everybody. It's just Jesus is going to claim everything. And so he's like, count the cost before you follow me. And then just to make sure that nobody misunderstood him, verse 33, chapter 14 of Luke, so therefore any one of you that does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. That's the terms of the deal. You want to stuff something into your pocket. You want to take a little bit with you. You want to have kind of some rivaling. You want Jesus to be, your top priority, but you might have a second top priority. He's like, no, you're not my disciple. Jesus goes on to say that not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but those who do the will of my Father, those who actually follow him, who are serious in their discipleship and bend everything in their life around discipleship of Jesus. And I long so much for us to be a church like that. Like, what would it be like if there was actually a church here in Rapid City that bent everything in their life around following Jesus? Like, just bent everything around it. Like what would the soccer leagues do? What would the baseball leagues do? What would our employers do? Like, I realize that this is not an easy thing that I am thinking about here. And it's easy to say when your vocation is to be a pastor, but I just wonder what that would be like, and I want to give it a shot. Here's how it works for me. So how do I lead this? Because I long for this to be the case. I see glimpses of it at times. I see at times when, and this is true in my own life, but also in the church, and when, man, it feels like this is a long ways away. It feels like we're a pretty typical American church that fits in discipleship when we can. And I just read the book of Luke and I go, man, I don't know that we have that option. If we're going to call ourselves a Christian church full of people who are true disciples of Jesus, like it looks like this is the terms of the deal. And I would just encourage all of us to really consider what that looks like, to bend more of our life around discipleship of Jesus together. That's why we have church covenant. That's why we have prayer meetings. That's why we have small groups. That's why we have Bible studies. That's why we have these things, is because there's no way to follow Jesus without time, without Bible, without prayer, without other Christians. There's just no way to follow Jesus without those four things, which means that we're going to have to spend our time, our money, our energy, our relationship capital on that. We're going to have to shift where we spend those things. And I want to be a people that's willing to pay that price, that's willing to die daily to what we would normally choose if we got to run our lives, and to choose what Jesus commands us to choose. And the way this works for me is let me give you my pastoral philosophy here, because this includes me too. This is not me calling you to something that I myself am not accountable to. But listen to this. John 10 is, again, thinking about serious discipleship. John 10:27. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. So that's a call of discipleship. Disciples hear the voice of Jesus, and they follow him. Okay, that's how you can tell who the disciples of Jesus are. When they hear his voice, they follow him. That's the deal. So for me as a pastor, this is how this works out for me. I need to make my first priority to hear the voice of Jesus, to know him and to follow him. So this, first and foremost, if I'm going to lead you into serious discipleship, number one, I have to hear the voice of Jesus every day, all day. I need to know him, not just know about him, but know him, and I need to follow him. I have to be serious about discipleship. I have to lead the charge. I have to set the pace for the rest of the church. Number two, my second priority must be that I must repeat the voice of Jesus. I must say to you, to the world, what Jesus said the way Jesus said it, so that it's Jesus's words and it sounds like Jesus. So I need to labor, just spend so much time knowing the shepherd, being serious about my own discipleship, and then trying to sound as much like him as I can. And then, and only then, will we know who the disciples are, because they will hear the voice of Jesus coming from our church, and the disciples will follow. The sheep will follow, the goats will not. That's how our church is going to grow going forward, is having leaders, hopefully more than me here soon, that hear the voice of Jesus and follow him with everything that they are, and then labor so hard to say what he said, to sound like him, to look like him. And those who follow are the sheep. They are the disciples. The ones who follow in discipleship are the sheep. 1 Corinthians 11:1, I don't need to turn there, but it says this. Paul says this to the dysfunctional Corinthian church: follow me as I follow Christ, which is the call to spiritual leadership. So my commitment to you as a pastor is to follow Jesus with all of my might. And I'm going to ask you to help me, because I'm not always going to get it right. But I am going to be serious. I'm going to go all out in my following Jesus. And I am going to labor massively every week to create opportunities and events for you to also follow Jesus with the same level of intensity. I'm going to call you to be involved in Christian community. I'm going to call you to give up other things to come pray. I am going to call you to give up things to come serve and to reach out. And we're going to grow in this together. I want to, with all of my heart, be able to say, follow me as I follow Christ. That to follow me is to see Jesus, to be going in the direction of Jesus. Not that it's about me, but if I don't lead the charge in this, then we're doomed, we're dead, and you should find another church. But if I am serious about this, and I am hearing the voice of Jesus, and I am repeating his voice, and you're hearing it, then you need to respond. You must hear the voice of Jesus and respond and follow him. That's what being a sheep is. That's what being a disciple is. So if everyone in our church followed Jesus as intensely as you do, would that be good news in our church? That's a question I want you to think about. If you were the standard, like everybody just followed Jesus to the same level of intensity you did, would that be good news for our church? For some of you, the answer would be yes. I see how you follow Jesus, and I'm massively encouraged and wish that other people would do the same. I do know that there's also some of us in the church that are not following Jesus in a way that really commends who he is. And we're not asking for perfection here. We're asking for the transforming power of the gospel to be at work within us and to make us true disciples. Reject the idea that the reality of salvation is by grace alone, through faith alone, in Jesus Christ alone, means that you can then not obey him. Obedience and the gospel of grace go together. They mutually reinforce one another. It's not legalism, it's not moralism. It is what grace does. The grace that saves also transforms. And a grace that does not transform is simply not the grace that saves. So we need to make sure that we keep those two together in right proportion and in right order. That grace, salvation by faith apart from works, and works that come as a fruit of grace are always kept together in the life of our church. And may that be true in my life, may that be true in your life, and may we be serious about discipleship in our church. A couple of events coming up. First, this coming Sunday, 9:15, there's a new class starting for 6th through 9th graders that's going to walk through the scriptures. It's going to look at how the Bible is one big story, how all the little stories of scripture fit together and point to Jesus. And this is going to be a great study. And don't miss out on this. This is a great opportunity for your kids to be discipled. So 9:15 on Sunday mornings for those group. We have all the other classes going on. And just to kind of give a little extra emphasis here, when Jesus rose from the dead and he went with some disciples on the road to Emmaus, his curriculum was this right here, teaching how the whole Bible points to him. So if Jesus were to show up and teach your middle schoolers a Sunday school class, this would be the class Jesus would teach. This is what he would teach them. So we're just echoing Jesus. We are hearing his voice and we are following him, and we are giving an opportunity for 6th through 9th graders to also hear his voice and follow him. And don't miss that opportunity, please. Also, Thursday, April 22nd is a youth event. We're going to be bowling at Meadowwood Lanes. It's going to be a great opportunity to just build some friendships. They've rented out the party room as well, and so there'll be some teaching, instruction, testimony as well there, just to encourage the kids spiritually as well. And so would encourage you to check that out. And then there's also Secret Church, which is a once-a-year event. It's a simulcast that thousands of people around the world tune in at once to hear David Platt do some teaching and lead us in some prayer activities related to global missions. So I would encourage you to consider coming to that. It's at South Canyon Baptist Church on April 23rd. You do have to register, so look online for that. And it's an awesome thing. It's really geared at adults, maybe even high school. I think what we're going to do as a family is we're going to sign up and we're going to bring all of our kids. So it'll be a little over Lydia's head, but Eli and Micah will be able to track with it. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want my kids to see how glorious Jesus is, and that will come through in this simulcast, and for them to follow him. But I want them to have a serious discipleship. I want them to think about, and I would love for God to call all 3 of my kids to be missionaries in hard places. So I'm trying to plant those seeds even in my little kids, and they might at times think it's a little boring, but man, the only way that people come to Jesus is if they're brought before Jesus. And this is an opportunity for them to hear about the glory of Jesus in saving all nations that includes them and also commissions them to be a part of it. So all that to say, I think it's worth your time. I think you should sign up. I think your heart will be stirred. And I think it's something that you could even bring some of your older elementary, middle school, high school kids. And you just never know what God might use to awaken their souls to salvation and how God might call them to ministry or some sort of service in his kingdom. This is when those things happen. This is the kind of event where that stuff happens. and I don't want you to miss it. Other stuff going on, go to rgcrc.org. All of it is designed to help you grow as a Christian. So consider wrapping your life around the church schedule and just see if you don't grow in your relationship to Christ, and if the whole tone of our church, the whole disciple of our church doesn't rise with you. I think you'll see that it does. I love you. Thank you for listening to me talk from the heart about following Jesus, and I pray there's something encouraging in it, and I hope you have a great week.